Welcome back to OOTP. If you saw our first half episode, you know basically this is a really good team with a really bad bullpen, and that continues to haunt us because Ward Sweetapple, who we just brought back from injury, has a torn labrum in his shoulder. That is a 5-month injury, so he will have to go on the 60-day injured list. The call-up here would normally be Braden Jennings from AAA, but he is also injured down there. So for now, I'm going to bring back up Dakota Ralston, who already made his debut earlier this year. At the All-Star break, our record is 53-45. Not a bad record by any means, but it's still 6 games behind the Astros and Angels, who share first place in our division. And if the season ended today, we would be out of the playoffs. We would not have a wild card spot. We do certainly have All-Stars, though. Butch Martin is an All-Star in his first year with the club, coming over from Philadelphia this past offseason. The same can be said about Juan Galindo coming over from San Francisco. Danny Baudanza is an All-Star once again. That's his second year in a row. And Jim Evans is an All-Star after we acquired him at the trade deadline last year. Around the league, some guys are having some really good seasons, including Chester Gurton, who does have a sprained finger, but that's not an issue for him. He's continuing to do Chester Gurton things. Here's what it looks like in the National League. Trip Jennings, the reigning Cy Young Award winner, gets the start. Julio Morales also having a big year. We saw him win an ERA crown a few years ago as a rookie. And let's see here who's having a big year. Tristan Wallace of the Milwaukee Brewers. This guy's absolutely on fire. Good for him. And Brady Harrison, his first year with the Mets, doing pretty good as well. I do think there was an all-star snub, though. Brendan Tindall with his 140 OPS plus, pacing for 5 WAR and 41 stolen bases. I would have liked to see our dangerous leadoff hitter end up in the all-star game. And now we are here at the trade deadline with a record of 59-49, a half a game off of that third wild card spot. I think it's pretty obvious what the goal of this trade deadline is going to be. We're going to try to improve our bullpen and get us into the playoffs by any means necessary. The first thing we're going to do is trade an old friend for another old friend. Jeremy Okoro has been a fixture in this lineup since 2032. He was part of the Josh Mears trade. We traded Josh Mears for him to the Cleveland Guardians, and he has done well, slotting into our lineup ever since. 109 OPS plus, 9 WAR, an all-star in 2033, a 2-time Gold Glove Award winner in left field, but some struggles this year. We've talked about the emergence of Cam Meyer. Next year would be his last year before free agency. We're talking about an ARB estimate of close to $9 million, and it's probably now good timing that we part with him. In return, we will get Chris Pereira, who we've had before. He was part of the bullpen on one of our really good playoff teams. I believe this team won 99 games right here in 2032. And Chris Pereira was a big part of that. He has struggled with the Braves some. They're going to cover the rest of his contract. They're using him as the closer. I think he'll be more of a stopper for us. And we'll also get Greg Moransky, who's just a minor league throw-in AAA starting pitcher. We'll go ahead and complete this trade. We'll get Chris Pereira, and we will say goodbye to Jeremy Okoro. Okoro was a big-time locker room presence for us, a captain, and we no longer have someone who can serve that role. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of Chris Brandt, who has been the backup catcher. Most of the time, the backup catcher is a good way to get a captain onto your team. We're going to waive and DFA him, and we will call up Devin Hicks to serve as the backup catcher the rest of the way. Our next trade to help out the bullpen will be with the Cleveland Guardians. We will trade a prospect. This is Rob Lewis, who we drafted in the 2035 draft, 5th rounder. As you can see, great defensive ratings, could play anywhere in the infield, wherever you want him, but kind of a noodle bat. I mean, everything's just 50, 45, 50, 45. So he'd never really have a chance to be an above-average hitter at the big league level, and as a result, I think he is expendable. In return, we will get Chad Staley, who has been their closer this year, although he has struggled a little bit in terms of some of the peripherals. His ERA is actually still quite good at 3.20, and he's racked up 17 saves. And then Danny Cox is like a fringy reliever/starter. He wants to be a closer himself, although he has been used in both roles in his major league career so far. He has another year left on his deal. It's a weird kind of small value 2-year deal, but we're going to have Cleveland cover all that money as well as the rest of Staley's money for the year. And in return, all it will take is Mr. Rob Lewis. So this is, again, to help the bullpen. I had kind of hoped to dump Tyler Pitzer's contract at some point this trade deadline, but it's not going to happen. He's not willing to waive his no-trade clause to anybody. I think that's because the team is doing fairly well. And actually, he's okay with his role on the team, which is surprising because we promised him he'd be in the starting rotation. He expects to be in the starting rotation. And yet, as a reliever, he seems just fine. He has not done well. He does lead the team in saves with 15, but he's also 2-8. He's blown a lot of those saves. And because of some of the trades we've made, we will see him pitching in much lower leverage roles. And then here's our final trade to help out the bullpen. Mason Miller Welcome back, bud. It's been a while. The last time Mason Miller pitched for the Oakland A's was 2036. That was 10 in-game seasons ago. Since then, he's gone on to start in Kansas City and then be just generally a star reliever in the American League in his 30s. He is now clearly declining. He has a 4.70 ERA on the Yankees. His contract is for $14 million. They're eager to get rid of him, and they're willing to eat the money to do so. Connor Phillips, a one-time Cy Young Award winner, is also going to join us in this trade. I think he can help us out of the bullpen as well. This is a guy who's always had great stuff, electric stuff, but very fringy control. He could be like a kind of a sixth starter for us at times too, if that's the direction we want to go. But I expect that stuff to tick up even further in the bullpen. He's going to strike out a lot of guys. Similar situation here. Yankees eating the money. He does have a team option for 2037. I can't imagine us taking it. In return, we will send along Danny Cox, who we just traded for. That was in the Cleveland trade, so we only hold on to the closer. And then Josh Cork, who has been a reliever on this team this year. He's been fine. We got him in that trade with San Francisco, but Galindo and Roussel were really the highlights of that trade with San Francisco. So we're going to make this trade and hopefully get the fans excited to see Mason Miller back in Oakland. To make this bullpen work, we're going to really need to use our options. So all these guys are getting an option. Morlock's getting option to AAA, and Tao's getting option to AAA. Ralston's getting option to AAA, and who knows, maybe they'll be back. There's no actual monetary investment in these guys, so it's going to be all about who performs. Danny Mills, getting optioned as well. Then we're going to grab the four guys we just traded for, Phillips, Miller, Pereira, and Staley. And then I also want to call back up Cephas and see what he's got. And finally, with Okoro gone, we're going to call back up Jesus Perales. He's going to be our fourth outfielder going forward, with Ian Kameyer taking over in left. So the new look for the pitching staff going forward is going to be this. Chris Pereira becomes a stopper, as well as Chad Staley. And we will line up like this, with Ian Kameyer taking over in left field in Jeremy Okoro's absence. And Ian Kameyer celebrates his return to the lineup with a 2-homer game and a 12-2 win at Toronto. Maybe we made the right decision. We'll just have to see. And now it's time for the August prospect check-in. We'll start here in rookie ball. You see Sojiro Nakamura, who's probably our best prospect, but we're waiting for him to actually develop the skills necessary to reach full season A ball. Hasn't done that yet, but he is still the number 27th ranked prospect in the game according to OSA. As we move on here to full season rookie ball, you can see some of our new draftees. Dan Wellens is down here. He's made his debut. He's done pretty well so far. He was our first rounder. Same can be said about Bob Humans, who was our fifth rounder. Again, only a few games played for these guys, but they've done well. David Morrell has a hamstring strain. That's a 3-week injury. He's a guy who's kind of been forced by the roster rules into full season A-ball, even though he's not totally ready. So you can see from the slash line there, not looking so great. Breeze has done pretty well. He will remain in full season A-ball for the time being. As we move on to high A, there is another injury. That is Bobby Baker, who was our 2035 first rounder. He has an injury, although he had performed well in high A. Not yet ready to move up to double A. I think he probably would have been if not for that injury. He will just finish out the season in high A. Jake Clark, who is a similar player, who is also a first rounder with a comp pick, remains in high A as well. He has not performed as well as Baker. Moving into Double A, we do have some movement here. We've talked about pitching. I want to talk about Tyrese Stance. Tyrese Stance was our 2035 third rounder. He's making the jump from high A to Double A to finish the year and performed well in high A, a 3.28 ERA in 18 starts, a lot of strikeouts, 125 strikeouts in 96 innings. He gets the jump up to Double A, where he joins Ben Edmondson, who is also in that same draft. And then Triple A, Eric Finch is going to jump up from Double A to Triple A after a strong performance in Double A with a 3.13 ERA, 101 strikeouts in 95 innings. Of all our pitching prospects, he's probably the closest to big league ready, although he's not there yet. In Triple A, we do have a few like 40-man guys who are just kind of not really getting opportunities. JJ Friedrich is one of those, the contact-oriented hitter. And then Pat Sievert, similar situation as well. It's not that these guys are bad, but they just quite aren't good enough to really seize opportunities with the big league team. One guy who might is Mike Del Fosse, a 2034 fourth rounder. I think if there's any sort of injury to an infielder down the stretch, he probably gets the call up and then probably replaces Liddell Hungo in the long term as far as a infielder who can play a variety of positions. August 12th update, exiting the trade deadline. This team is playing really, really well. We've won 8 in a row to give us a record of 69-50. We're currently only 3 games behind the division-leading Astros, and we currently occupy the second American League wildcard spot. From our team's position, we've got our eyes on the division, because if we can win the division, with the American League Central being what it is, most likely if we win the division, we would get that first round bye and go straight to a division series. In fact, that success continues, and yet we are still only 3 games back, despite the fact that we have now won 12 games in a row. When will this winning streak end? Right there, but we won 12 in a row. I think that's our longest winning streak we've had in this save, and yet didn't really make up any ground on the Angels there at the end. This is a really tough division. And of course, right as I open up my stupid mouth about our injury luck, Chris Greer is injured with the diagnosis pending. We know it's a hand injury. We don't know how long it'll be for. A little bit of a disappointing year for him. 20 home runs on the year. He's getting out-homered by Ardley, DeBona, and Evans, and Roussel is right up there with them. So it's a little bit surprising in that regard, but obviously he is a big part of our team still. Let's see what it is the injury. Ooh, still no news on him. We do win 12-1 versus San Diego, but I'm a little worried about this. We need an MRI or an X-ray or something. Broken hand, he will be out for 3 months. He will miss the rest of the season. So we will add him to the 60-day injured list. That'll clear up a spot on the 40-man. And the call-up will be Mike Delfasi, one of the prospects we were just talking about. He's hit 32 home runs in AAA this year, had an excellent year, and now he's ready to make his big league debut as we try to chase down this division lead. So we'll go ahead and line it up like this. Liddell Hungo and Mike Delfasi will become a third base platoon. They will each bat ninth, respectively, versus left-handed and right-handed pitching. Jim Evans shifts over to first base. Prince Ardley shifts over to DH. Obviously, the lineup's going to be a lot worse from an offensive perspective, right? Anytime you're replacing Chris Greer with Liddell Hungo and Mike Delfasi, things might go down, but the upshot is better defense all around the infield. August 30th now, our record is 80-55. That's a very good record, but we're still 3 games off the division lead. And Connor Phillips has followed up the Chris Greer injury with an injury of his own. This is a strained shoulder. It influences his throwing, which is akin to his pitching. Hadn't been too bad for us since we converted him to a reliever and had him come out of the pen for us, but I think it's probably best that he not pitch through this injury. We will add him to the injured list. The corresponding call-up is going to be Braden Jennings. I think we could use another lefty in the bullpen. Even though we decided to call up Jennings first, roster expansion was just around the corner. It is now September 1st. Our record is 81-55, and would you believe it, we're still third place in our own division with a record of 81-55. We're one of the best teams in the league, and yet we're also in third place. I would say we're in a pretty good position as far as a wild card spot goes. We'll have to see. It's still very competitive here. I mean, Boston are out of the spot right now, and they're 77-59. That's pretty surprising to see. But we really want the division, and we're going to make some call-ups to hopefully help us down the stretch. I will bring back up Bob Morlock, who we got in that trade with Boston this past offseason. And then I think I could just use another bat, another outfielder. I'll call back up Jeff Boudreau, who has been kind of in and out in this team in September a lot lately. Would you just check out the ERAs in the rotation? It is a thing of beauty. Mike Drake leads the way with a 2.66. He's having a great bounce-back year. And in fact, this rotation in general is having a bounce-back year because that was our weakness in 2035, a strength for us in 2036. Although, surprisingly, still not the best starters ERA in the American League. I'm curious to see who that actually could be. Bullpen ERA is coming down as well. It was 4.50 at the trade deadline. Now it's 4.32. September 6th, out of taking 3 of 4 from Houston, we are tied with them in the division for second. We are 1 game behind the Angels. We want the division so bad. I hope we can get it here in these last few weeks. September 10th, we are now 88-56, tied with the Angels, but there is a problem. Juan Galindo, our catcher, our all-star catcher, I should add, pending with an injury to his upper body. And what happened here is he had a day-to-day injury that was a hip flexor strain, and we mistakenly played him through it. If I had realized the effect was moderate, I wouldn't have done it, but he has aggravated that injury, I imagine, and he may need some time on the injured list. The question is, will it end his season, whatever it is that's wrong? Still no result from him. We do lose versus Arizona. Still tied at the top of the division. I think we're in trouble here. Yep, he will be out for 5 weeks. That'll end his regular season. There's maybe a chance he could come back late in the postseason if we make a run, but that is a huge loss, and that's just my mistake. I played him through a moderate injury, and I shouldn't have done that, and that's going to cost us. The guy we're going to call up is Danny Long, and I'll give you a quick primer on him. So he was drafted by the Reds in 2032. He bounced around a bunch, And so we ended up signing him to a minor league deal last year, and he performed so well in 2035, granted that was in high A, that I decided I should just keep him around. I added him to the 40-man. He's played most of the year in AAA. His OPS in AAA is over 1,000, and he's going to be our starting catcher for the rest of the season. Pretty unbelievable story for him. So as a result of that injury, Danny Long will be batting 9th, and our lineups will look like this going forward as we try to win this division. September 16th, as you can see in the top right here, we end up splitting our series with the Angels. We win the first 2, then lose the next 2, so we're still tied in the division at 91 and 59. We've got 12 games left to go to decide this thing. September 20th, we have clinched a postseason spot. We are going back to the playoffs, that much is certain. We are 93 and 60, but the question is, of course, can we win the division? Crucially, we take 2 out of 3 from the Angels in our last series against them. Now we have a series coming up against Texas, and we will finish versus Houston. We may end up battling Houston for this division. The magic number is 4. We are 95 and 61. Connor Phillips is ready to rejoin the team. We're going to use the option on Bob Morlock, but that doesn't necessarily mean he has no chance of making the playoff roster. I think it's just about giving Phillips a chance to see what he can do this final week of the season, and then we'll really have to decide how we want to make our bullpen work. And what does Connor Phillips do during his first game back? He instigates a brawl. He gets suspended 3 games when there's like 6 games left in the season, buddy. You're trying to get a spot on this playoff roster. I know you've got great stuff. I know you won a Cy Young Award, but you got a 5.28 ERA for us, even though you're striking out a lot of guys. And he goes and he gets suspended right after he throws 2 pitches and allows a run. I can't tolerate this. I'm sorry. I'm afraid I just cannot tolerate this. Now, listen, Connor Phillips, I'm not paying you anything. The Cubs are covering 80% and the Yankees are covering the other 20%. You've got a team option for 2037. I'm actually just going to waive and DFA him. I don't owe him any money, and we've got guys like Bob Morlock who are actually trying to win games for us. So going into our final series of the season, a 3-game set against Houston, I think we've just got to win a game, basically. I checked, and we do hold the tiebreaker over the Angels. That's 94 and 65. Houston, I didn't check the tiebreaker on, but our magic number is 2. I think if we just win a game, we've got it. We've got this division. Let's keep it simple. Let's win a game versus Houston. And we will do that. And we clinch the division, a 4-3 victory. What happens here? We walk it off in the 9th thanks to a Rancer Waltz single off of former Oakland A David Rivera. I tell you, every time I come and I look at a box score of a close game, Waltz comes through with a clutch hit. We go ahead and complete the sweep of Houston to end the regular season. What a year for this team. 99 wins. We are going straight on to the division series. And with those 99 wins, we are the second best team in the American League behind the Tampa Bay Rays. You will see the Angels, Astros, and Red Sox representing the wild card in the American League. The Twins win the Central. In the East, you've got the Mets, Cubs, and Giants winning their divisions, with the Marlins, Phillies, and Diamondbacks representing as wild card teams. We scored 790 runs and allowed only 631. The bullpen really calmed down. We actually ended up with the 3rd best bullpen ERA, 1st in FIP, 3rd in OPS. This was a really, really good team. I've gone ahead and set up the playoff roster, but I should review a couple of guys who won't be on the roster because of injuries. One of those is Chris Greer. Chris Greer, he hit 20 homers this year, a 124 OPS plus. 2nd year in a row, he's been just a little bit below his usual standards. You can see kind of from his career, and he did get injured in 2033, but 2032 and 2034, those were his best years, and 2035 and 2036 been a little bit disappointing, although still quite good. Here's the contract that he's under, at least the rest of it. Juan Galindo was an all-star for us this year. He kind of babbiffed his way to it and then had some regression in the second half before he got hurt. He still might have a chance to come back later on in the postseason. We'll see. It's 2 to 3 more weeks for him. But let's go ahead and check in on the playoff roster, the players who remain. This is how I want us lining up going into the postseason. Mike Del Fosse, I kind of messed up with him. He only got 6 starts once he got called up and didn't perform all that well, although I don't think it really would have mattered. Anyways, if we're facing a left-handed starter, I don't want him in the lineup. Instead, I'm going to call upon Jesus Perales. He will play left field while we have Ian Kammmeyer move over to DH, and then we'll have Evans third base, Ardley first base. And that's because Perales, and in a small sample, granted, hit extremely well for us, particularly after the call-up. So I would like him in the lineup versus left-handed pitching, even at the expense of infield defense. Versus right-handed pitching, it'll look like this. You got Tyndall leading off. Tyndall just, oh man, what an awesome year for Brendan Tyndall. 5.4 WAR, led the team. I would have easily taken a repeat of 2035, which was already the best year of his career, but nope, in 2036, he does us even better. What an awesome year. Steve DeBona, 5 WAR season. This is exactly what we had in mind when we gave him that extension. Just elite defense, good power. Even if he strikes out 198 times, 29 homers from an elite defensive shortstop, that's a 5 WAR season. Jim Evans was great, playing some third base, playing some first base. Roussel, what a great surprise. 25 homers for him, a career year for him as well. We acquired him via trade from San Francisco, but don't forget we drafted him. Rancer Waltz was really brought on to be more of a utility type player. Instead, he grabs the starting second base role and doesn't look back with a 115 OPS plus. An elite defense at second base adds up to a 3 WAR season. Prince Ardley, was on the fritz for us a little bit, but he still puts together a great offensive season. 25 homers included in that. Ian Kameyer, great year for him. A rookie year, he may get some down ballot rookie of the year type votes. Liddell Jungo, sorry, not Mike Del Fosse. Liddell Jungo, really the only guy in this lineup who's struggling some. We're going to start him at third base versus right-handed pitching, particularly because, look at these ratings. He's a great defensive third baseman at the very least. And then versus lefties, we bench him and we kind of shift things around a little bit. I do want to give a shout out to Danny Long for sure, because Danny Long came in after the Galindo injury and just absolutely wrecked. It's like we didn't even notice he was gone. 4 homers in 13 games. He will be our starting catcher throughout these playoffs. This is what it's going to look like in the rotation. Drake, Martin, Medina, and Spector, all with ERAs under 3.5. This team is really good, guys. This may be our year. I just have to manage it properly in the playoffs. Robbie Spector actually led the league in wins with 16. His strength is that he has that 65 stamina, so he can throw a lot of innings, 193 to be exact. Mike Drake can't throw a lot of innings, but 2.77 ERA is awesome. That's an awesome bounce back. And then Martin and Medina were excellent as well. And the bullpen is going to get interesting. I think Baudanza, Pereira, and Staley have established themselves as our high leverage guys. Pereira was excellent once we traded for him, and so was Chad Staley. And Baudanza was excellent all year and just continues to be excellent for us. That was just an awesome acquisition when we traded Mark Cox for him. I think David Luvano, who was the 5th man in the rotation for us this year, will be absolutely crucial come postseason because we're going to need him to get outs against lefties, probably in bulk. He will be an absolutely crucial player, and I hope he doesn't go the way of Cam Caminiti. We've got Mason Miller on the playoff roster, an OG Oakland A himself. Bob Morlock is here at the expense of Connor Phillips. Bob Morlock pitched well. It was only 13 innings, but Connor Phillips really annoyed me. Braden Jennings, he is a lefty, so that is something. However, his repertoire actually is better suited to face righties, so he's not necessarily a shutdown lefty. As a result, we do have Cephas in there. Even though Cephas had a really bad year, you can totally see me getting into a scenario where I need to use Cephas to get out against a lefty, maybe if Luvano's tired, or something like that. And then finally, it's a franchise legend. It's Tyler Pitzer serving a long relief role for us this postseason, but he is still certainly on the postseason roster. We're really excited. Now that the wildcard rounds are over, we know for a fact we will be facing the Boston Red Sox in the upcoming best-of-5 division series. We got a little bit lucky here. I'm glad we're not in this part of the playoff tree. I'd rather face Boston than the winner of the Houston and Los Angeles Angels series. The Houston Astros advancing in that to face the 100-win Rays. Taking a look at the Red Sox here, I think we can take them. They are a talented team, but we have to believe that this is our year. Their pitching is pretty good, but one thing that's curious, they just have all lefties in the bullpen. I wonder if we can find a way to feast off of that. In the rotation, they have their star pitcher, Joel Landis. He is 26 years old. Was he an all-star this year? Yes, he was. He had an excellent season for them, although only pitched half the year, interestingly enough, but he will be their ace. They do have some good guys in the middle of the lineup. Chris Warner was a guy I actually looked at trading for, and he had a very good year for them, a .399 on base percentage thanks to his 75i. Humberto Burgos is their second baseman. I think I've seen him play third base for them as well, but he's kind of bounced around. Kind of a down year for him offensively, but he's still a very good player. Then Miguel Bleis, who is a great young Red Sox prospect in real life. 5.5 WAR season. He may very well be their star, the guy we avoid the most in terms of the lineup. They also have a 33-year-old Marcelo Meyer leading off and playing third base for them, but we'll just have to see how we do against them in the next episode.